Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Starting this week and with every week for the next probably 15 weeks, I'm going to be posting one video a week of me doing a worst to best albums list. This week I'm going to start out with a redux of one of the lists I did last year, which is my worst to favorite Kiss albums. This list was very hard to do, especially since I've grown to become even more of a Kiss fan since last year. Kiss has always been my favorite band, but I've grown to mature with their albums a little bit more. So this list is very hard to make because there are very few Kiss albums that I genuinely dislike. To be honest, there's only 4 that I really do not like. Out of 20 albums, 4 that are not good is pretty good to me. So I'm going to start out with my least favorite Kiss album, which is Hot in the Shade. I still like a lot of songs off this album. Probably almost half of the album I like, but the other half is horrible, worse than any other Kiss album. The production, they all sound like demos, and the album's way too long. I mean, I get that it's the first one of the CD age, but 15 songs is way too much, and it shows. If they just made one album, a 70s length album out of Hot in the Shade, I think it would be a lot higher on my list, because it does have a lot of songs I really like, but the rest of the album is just so bad I can't place it any higher than my lowest album. Number 19 is Sonic Boom. So, Sonic Boom was the first album that they put out while I was alive. Psycho Circus came out the year before I was born. I'd heard that before Sonic Boom came out. I'd heard pretty much almost all the Kiss albums, except for some of the late 80s stuff before Sonic Boom came out. And when I first heard Sonic Boom, I liked some of it. I actually liked a lot more than I like today, but the more I listen to it, the more I realize it's not there. It doesn't sound like a good album, and I really think that since people were waiting so long for this album, it really came as a disappointment. At number 18 is Crazy Nights. This used to be my least favorite Kiss album, but it moved up 2 places. I like about half of this album. The other half is just really bad. It has highs like No 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 and Thief in the Night, but then it has lows like My Way. So when you have to put that in perspective and you see, yeah, it has some really good songs on it, but the lows are just so low. The last album that I really dislike, my number 17, is Carnival of Souls. I'm not a big grunge guy, so when I listened to this album for the first time, it really turned me off. Now that I listen to it more and more, there's more songs that I do like, but I'm just not a big fan of this album overall. At number 16 is an album that I think is okay, and it's better than any of the other ones I've already listed, is Monster, their most recent album. I really do like this album. Some of it does feel repetitive, but it does feel like a lot better of an album than Sonic Boom. Sonic Boom was trying to be Old Kiss and failed at being Old Kiss. This, they sort of try to be Old Kiss, but they sort of didn't, and it felt refreshing. Like a lot of their Psycho Circus I love, but they were trying to be Old Kiss. But Monster, they weren't trying as hard to be Old Kiss as they were on the past 2 albums, and I think it showed, and I think it's a lot better than Sonic Boom. At number 15 is Animalize. I like about 4/5 of this album. A couple songs aren't that good, but overall it's a really good album. It still carries over the sort of heavier feel of Creatures and Lick It Up, with stuff like I've Had Enough, and songs like that are basically what make me really like this album. I personally love Heaven's on Fire. I know it's sort of overplayed, but I really do still like that song, and I think it's a great song. This album's a very good album. There's still a couple songs that I think are okay or I don't like that much. So at number 14 is, I think, their probably most overrated album. I used to love it, but the more I listen to it, the more I find a dislike for it, so who knows? By next year at this time, it might be even lower on the list, and that is 1992's Revenge. So coming off the death of Eric Carr, he only played on 2 songs on this album. I really do think they were trying to get back to basics after trying to do keyboards and failing, and then trying to sound like um, Skid Row and failing. I think they really tried to get back to basics on this. So, some of the songs are good. Like Unholy is the best song they've done in years, but it's the rest of the album really falls flat. Especially the instrumentation is good, but the lyrics, it's just you could tell they tried too hard on the lyrics. So at number 13 is Asylum. This is from here to my number one are albums I absolutely love. Starting with Asylum, it's probably one of their most overlooked albums of the 80s. Nobody really talks about how good Asylum is, but really, there's only one or two subpar songs on this entire album. Paul still has good songs. You couldn't say that until Revenge. The next two albums after this were complete crap Paul songs. Gene had some good songs on this album. But yeah, it continued the trend of great opening songs with King of the Mountain, Any Way You Slice It, Who Wants to Be Lonely, I Love Tears Are Falling. But yeah, it's a great album. Nobody ever talked about it. I wish people talked about it more when they talked about 80s Kiss. When everybody talks about 80s Kiss, it's Creatures and Lick It Up, but I think Asylum's right up there. So, at number 12, one above Asylum, would be Unmasked. A lot of people don't think it's that good. I think it's a great album. I really think every song on this album is very good, except for, oh gosh, one of the Paul songs. I can't remember what it's called, but I think every other song on the album is really good. So, I don't have much to say about Unmasked. I really like the album. At number 11 is Psycho Circus, another one that I love every song off of. I don't care what people say about I Finally Found My Way, I still love that song. But yeah, I think it's just a great album. At number 10 is Music from the Elder, a lot of people's least favorite Kiss album. I think it's one of their best from post-70s. I think it's a great, great album that people just need to take the name Kiss away from it. If they don't look at it as a Kiss album, I think they'll appreciate the music a lot more. At number 9, a lot of people would say it should be a lot higher on my list, but I really do think a lot of the 70s stuff is better, is Lick It Up. I think it is still a fantastic album. I love every song on it. Some have given me more. I can take it or leave it, but I think it is such a great album. It continues the heaviness of Creatures, and it brought Kiss back into the mainstream. I mean, taking off their makeup was the best thing they could have done. They would have floundered if they didn't take the makeup off, and I think they came back really strong and focused more on the music and not as much on the image, and I think that really did save them. At number 8, some people would say I have it way too low on this list, like Lick It Up, is the first Kiss album, but I can tell you, I like them all more on Alive. When you listen to the first Kiss album, it just doesn't have the same power that the versions on Alive have. Even, I could say that about some of the stuff on Hotter Than Hell and Just to Kill, but I still love those albums in the studio. I'm not a big fan of the production or the musicianship on the first Kiss album. I love the songs, but I don't think this is the best performance of those songs. At number 7, I have Dynasty. Holy crap. It is not a disco album. I don't care what anyone says. It is not a disco album. It is a heavy album when you look past I Was Made for Loving You and Sure Know Something and Dirty Living. But look at stuff like the Ace songs, Magic Touch, X-Ray Eyes. They are all heavy songs, and people don't give them enough credit for those songs. Everybody just looks at I Was Made for Loving You and then says, ooh, and turns it off. I think people need to look at the actual album more than just the first song, and I think it sort of tarnishes the album for people, but I love that album so much. There's no bad song on it at all. At number 6, I have Love Gun. Great, great, great album. It brought a nice close to the second trilogy of Kiss albums. I think that it is absolutely a flawless album. I even like And Then She Kissed Me. But yeah, it's just Love Gun is a great album. It has so many classic Kiss songs. it basically, it broke them a lot. It continued to build on what they were doing with Destroyer and Rock and Roll Over. And speaking of, my number 5 is Rock and Roll Over. I do think it is better than Love Gun, but not by much. It's very, very close. I think that Rock and Roll Over it's a very heavy album. It's probably one of their heaviest 70s albums, other than Hotter Than Hell. But I think it is a very, very heavy album with a lot of good deep tracks that people don't talk about. Mr. Speed, Take Me. I just think it's such a great album, both the popular stuff and the deep tracks. But yeah, it's just, I've heard some people say it's their favorite. It's not my favorite, but it's in my top 5. At number 4 is Dressed to Kill. I really came into this album very recently. I was never a big fan of this album until I listened to it a couple times very recently. It's such a great album, I think, that I don't know why I didn't think it was as good as it really is, but listening to it recently, I just really, really started to like this album. It is probably the lightest of the first 3 albums, and I wish there would be more songs from this on Alive. I think that they are so tight on this album. I think it's a great musicianship, and the vocals on this album are still very, very good. Okay, getting into my top 3. At number 3, Hotter Than Hell, my favorite of the original 3 Kiss albums. It's just so heavy. This is like the closest Kiss got in the 70s to like heavy metal, doom metal. They sound like Black Sabbath on stuff like Strange Ways, proto thrash with Parasite. It's just very, very heavy album that nobody really talks about. It's just such a great album, and I'm very, very, very fond of this album, and that's why it's in my top 3. Coming in at number 2 is Creatures of the Night. This was my number 1 for a very, very, very long time. It's just such a return Kiss to what they truly are, a hard rock band. It's a very heavy metal album, and the drums on this album, the crunching guitars from Vinnie Vincent, Paul's singing, Gene's singing, this whole album is so great. And a lot of people don't talk about some of the deep cuts in this album, but the deep cuts are so killer. It's just such a great album, and my number 1 barely beats it. It's just so close to my number 1. So, as you probably guessed by now, my number 1 is something that, basically, it's the most popular Kiss album for people that aren't Kiss fans, but no Kiss fan puts it at their number 1. But this is the album that got me into Kiss. This is the first Kiss album I ever owned from the time I was probably 2 years old. My dad had his old cassette copy of Destroyer, and I listened to it nonstop. I wore it to dust. We still have the cassette, but it won't play anymore because I played it that much. I just love that album from front to back. The album is complete perfection. I'm not the biggest fan of Beth, but it's still an amazing song, and I just think it's such a great album, back to front, front to back. Every song fits perfectly in with what they were trying to do. It's sort of a directional shift from the first 3 albums, and I'm just so happy with the result. It is my favorite Kiss album, and it was for a long time, but I finally realized it really is my favorite Kiss album. So, yep. So that is my least favorite to favorite Kiss albums. Check back in every week from now on for probably the next 15 weeks to see a new video of my least favorite to favorite albums from different bands. If you have any suggestions for videos you'd like me to do other than the weekly worst to best, let me know in the comments, and thank you guys so much for watching. This has been my worst to best Kiss albums Redux.